from doing what they're going to do, right? We still have to police those people that choose to go out there and be just chaotic. It's just like, it's like one day out of the year that it's like, they can be, it's this feeling of lawlessness. They can just go out there and blow things up.
Right, yeah.
And that's not okay. So we need to address those problems as they come up. But for people who just need the, need that law to say, okay, I'm not gonna break the law here. And then that gentle pressure or constant apply consistently on them to say, okay, this is not okay, it's illegal. It'll take a little time. So if we can get that law in place, it might take a few years for really that message to get out and for the majority of the people to say, okay, I got it. I'll go down and watch a neighboring show or something.
We don't have years. Her husband and her fur babies
I understand.
were
You gotta start somewhere.
have to start
You gotta
somewhere.
start somewhere.
So can I ask a forward-looking question? I was one of the folks that were here at the fire commission meeting. We appreciate your time.
Yes.
And several folks afterwards came and met with you. You just mentioned a few minutes ago, there's 9 commissioners that we need to work on to get 5 votes. Who are they and how do we do that?
Yes.
If the change is as strong as the weakest link, who are the weak links? And let's approach them. Because while I understand complaints, and I was one of the complainers, it's time to look forward and move towards that action.
Thank you.
We need to organize, big groups or small, whatever the case may be, to approach those people with phone calls and emails and show up at their meetings and have those discussions to influence their decisions, because at the end of the day, we're all upset about her family passing. What we need to do is to prevent that going forward, and the ban is what does that. So what is the approach going forward?
I'm gonna be working with you over the course of this year, that body of work. And that's gonna be, first of all, talking to my colleagues who represent big pieces of unincorporated King County, because it would affect their constituents more than others. Draft legislation as I'm introducing legislation, make sure I'm touching base and talking to the rest of my colleagues on the county council, and keeping in touch with you as I'm doing that. And while some of the stories here could be really powerful in talking to my colleagues, at least as important to them is hearing from their own constituents too. So it's gonna be invaluable to be able to talk to fire commissioners across the county. It's gonna be imperative to talk to other unincorporated area councils, other neighborhood groups like this in unincorporated King County, to talk about their experiences to their council members. So it's gonna be there's not one phone call, and it'd be premature to start calling my colleagues and talking about legislation that hasn't been introduced yet. But it's gonna be an ongoing body of work, and we're gonna have to be able to work together with that forward goal in mind to be able to do this. And I need your help to be able to do that, both in telling your stories and, as I said, making those connections with people across the county. That's gonna be essential.
So
Well,
what
it
he's
seems pretty
asking
clear.
is, how do we get the information about those commissioners? Do we get it through?
The council, my colleagues on the county council?
No, that's your.
Let's go with
Okay.
let's go with all of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a
I'll,
Facebook.
I'll talk to Liz,
Yeah,
Commissioner Giba, about working with the other commissioners across the state,
right.
or the county.
So if she can, because we have signed in, if she can distribute contact information, and then you can alert or whatever, whoever, when you are ready for us to
Yes.
start.
For anything we can do.
Yes.
So that
I will
would be
keep in
the
touch with,
system.
I will keep in touch with you throughout this body of work, because I'm going to need to be successful.
Right.
And we want to do this, right?
Yes.
So we can, as a council too, there are, all through unincorporated King County, there's what, 5 councils still on,
More than John?
Unincorporated area.
yeah. But in any event, we can contact each area of the council and talk to them about getting the word out in their communities as well.
Can they be posted, that information to the meeting notes that are typically posted following these meetings?
It seems pretty clear too that the business of selling fireworks has been a pretty strong political force in the county. And I wouldn't expect them to not be, as their livelihood to some extent is being discussed. So that's something that people need to keep in mind as well.
There will be sellers,
And county council people who have responded more in line with the business interests.
Mark, there will be sellers, and there will be people who find it patriotic to be able to celebrate our nation's independence with fireworks on the 4th of July, and frankly, on the 2nd, 3rd, 5th, and 6th, too. And so, don't think that everybody at White Center is going to agree with you if you're in this room right now thinking, yes, we need to ban fireworks. This will be contentious conversation in this community at times and across the county. So don't be surprised by that.
Make the touchdown. Every time the Seahawks make the touchdown, I gotta hear the fireworks every day.
Oh, yeah. Somebody like that.
Outreach maybe and.
Two questions. One, following up on someone mentioned the police set to videotape. Is that legal? Can we videotape our neighbors when they're setting off fireworks? And will you follow up on it? Like, if we give you the tape, will you actually go ticket them the $700 whatever dollars?
Well, as long as it's,
It's reasonable and you can
yeah,
view it,
within
yeah.
the law, yeah.
Um,
Outside the law.
The second question is, I think we have 2 state reps here.
Yeah.
Why does it have to be no offense, why does it have to be a King County Council vote? Why can't the state ban them?
Sure, yeah, it's a local option, and I can tell you there's parts of the state that would never vote for it.
Right.
You know, and so what the state law has been is that it's basically a local option to decide whether they ban it or they don't ban it. We can't do anything about the sales on the Indian reservations.
Right,
That's-
but why not take away the local option?
So what we'll say is that there's not gonna be enough support for that, because there's a lot of people in the rural parts of the state that will never vote for that. But what we can do, what we're both supportive of doing, is the issue that you've heard about here tonight, that any local ban has to wait a year before it takes effect, that, we get to go through another 4th of July. That is something that we can try to fix in Olympia come January. We're in session January through March, and that's an issue that I think we're prepared to go ask our colleagues to join us and tell the stories about how our community's been impacted by fireworks, both in terms of public safety, in terms of, people's pets going crazy. I'm so sorry to hear your story, but we would love to, have your story bring positive change about in our state. I'll tell you, I don't think that a statewide ban on fireworks is gonna pass, but I do think that we can embark on an effort to try to get rid of that requirement that we wait a year and go through another 4th of July and 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 6th of July before a ban can take effect. Because when the community comes together and says, this is not right for our community anymore, then, I don't think there's a good public policy reason to make people wait a year.
Just a very simple follow-up to that. If that legislation is brought forth in Olympia, how do we get notified of when that is so that we choose to become a supporter?
Yes.
In person?
Yes.
We can take down your
Yeah.
contact info here tonight and let you know.
If there's a way to share it back to this.
Absolutely, we're happy to do that. So the legislature doesn't meet until January, so the soonest we could actually try to do this is January, but that's around the time when we would start talking about this, and I think we'd be happy to share this info with the appropriate area council.
The one thing that I just have to say, I live in West Seattle and have a view of, and it looks like Beirut, even where it's banned. That's why my husband and I have jokingly said that that's what it looks like on the 4th, and it sounds, yeah. So I don't want people to think that all the problems get solved just because we pass a law. That's, it's kind of like, but it does help, it helps. And especially because the sales wouldn't be going on. That's probably the biggest thing that happens. But you still, as you said, there's still idiots that are gonna shoot it off
And one of the things I just heard from Chief, from the officers, from Councilmember McDermott, is part of the thing that makes it hard for, our police officers to enforce these laws is that we have different laws in Seattle and Burien. So even in Seattle and Burien, where these things are already banned, it's much harder for them to enforce a ban when it could have been that firework was coming from White Center where it's not yet banned. So just having the consistency across these jurisdictions is gonna make it a lot easier for these guys to do their job and ticket people who are actually breaking even the law in places where it's currently banned. So, but again, it's not gonna be solved overnight, but that is having that consistent application of a ban across these multiple jurisdictions is a big part of how these guys can do their jobs more easily.
By the way, Joe and I need, my understanding is I get monthly update from you
Yeah.
in my email.
Yeah, right.
So you can email them and they will keep you updated on current legislation. And so anybody who wants to do that, it's free information.
We don't wanna take time from this.
Ma'am,
Hi, yeah, so, hi, so I don't wanna take a long time, but I do want to say that, next time we're in this meeting, we might want to, I don't know, look around, because people have been holding their hands up for a long time, and we just keep talking, and I get that we're excited, that's amazing, but I thought my arm was gonna fall off. Okay, so a couple of things, what I'm hearing from you is that a partial ban is not gonna work at all, even though there's quite a large percentage of the population in White Center that do feel it's patriotic, or do wanna have some form of non-aggressive firework usage on the 4th of July, but that it's simply just not possible to regulate anything else on a partial ban, because there's no way to really decide what is what, so you wouldn't be able to enforce the things that we don't want and allow the things that we want. Is that clear? Are you saying that a full ban is the only way to solve the issue of stopping things that happen to her and her husband and her dogs?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so the other question.
There are other legislative options. I think that's gonna be the
Right,
only
but
effective
you're saying
one.
from an enforcement standpoint, that's really the only way that we can do it, because everything else is a little bit too complicated. But that we can't stop anything, we can't stop buying, we can't stop the selling of fireworks at all from the reservations. So we'll still probably have some, but we won't be selling in the local neighborhood, so it'll be less and easier to respond to. Great, so the other thing is that currently we don't have the ban, and those mortar shells are probably already illegal anyway, but we can't enforce those. We can't stop the mortar shells that are blowing up all over the place, even though they're illegal. Like, all you have to do is drive down the street. You don't even have to have anyone call. You can drive down the street and watch people do it. Are we saying we don't have enough manpower to handle that right now? And that we just need to do a full ban?
Well, if mortars up to 1 3/4 are still legal, and that's my understanding of what it is, then how do you know if it was 1 3/4 or 2 inches or 2 1/2?
Okay. Is there a resource that we can just get to everybody that tells us what the current, you guys have your list of what is legal and what isn't? Is there like a website we can go to look at that list?
You go to the Washington State Patrol, State Fire Marshal's office, look under fireworks, and they have a really nice poster. This is legal, this is not.
Okay. And then there was one last thing, I had to hold my hand, I still on it. After we do the ban, and we get that all done, and we've waited the year, and then now we're at that 4th of July where we shouldn't be seeing any fireworks, not a sparkler, not nothing, and we know that we are going to have some. What can we do to better assist local law enforcement to enforce the rule in our local neighborhoods, besides just blowing up the phone? Is there anything else that we can do? Is there any specific action that you would like us to take, except for, I saw this thing here? Do all of us need to be out with cell phones videotaping? Is that what you're saying that we need to do?
Well, I would say you just, like for any other crime that's occurring, or other incident where you need the police or the fire, that you call 911, and we'll get out there. And keep in mind, just like the fire department chasing calls, we're very busy on the 4th of July, so we'll be chasing a lot of calls. And to answer the question as far as why it's so important from the enforcement standpoint to ban everything, is like, we might be chasing a lot of calls that we can't do anything about. And so it's better just to know, okay, they're illegal, if they're doing them, then you're gonna get cited for it, right? Plain and simple, and make it very clear to them what we're doing. But yeah, I mean, you have to call 911. If you can, if you choose to take some video, you certainly can do that. But there's no other mechanism, because we're not.
That's fine.
I mean, if you know your neighbor, and if you get along with your neighbor, and you feel comfortable by going over and saying, hey, you know that fireworks are banned.
Right.
And
a lot of times it's just people
that's
that
not
are
gonna
on
blow
your
up
street.
into a big, argument. Then yeah, that's what you can do as neighbors without getting the police or the fire department involved. If you want to just talk it over and be able to say it, but that's up to you at your discretion as far as whether or not you.
So one last thing, and this was the thing that I had forgotten. We had said that the reason why White Center is so bad right now is because places like Burien did a full ban, and everyone's just kind of funneling into White Center where it's legal. My question then is, we do a full ban. Where are we pushing all of these people? What is the next city that's gonna have to deal with this? because they're now leaving White Center to go to the next city to flood them with this kind of thing. So what is the city that we're passing this problem on to? Because you know the people are gonna go to the next city.
I think let's be clear about the problem. Some of the fireworks being ignited are from people coming in because it's legal here. But I actually think probably the majority of them are people who live here. People lighting them off in their own front yard, in their own street, maybe inviting some neighbors and some friends over. Some of those neighbors and friends may not live in North Highline, but may live in Seattle or may live in Burien. But I bet the majority is people who do live here, or somebody involved certainly does live here.
So you don't think they're gonna get pushed to another city and create a bigger problem somewhere
To the degree they will, fireworks are banned in Burien, fireworks are banned in Seattle, and they'd be banned throughout unincorporated King County when this work is done.
Okay.
I don't have a list of the other 37 cities in King County, knowing which ones have banned and which ones have not.
Thank you.
Both Des Moines and Seacock.
Thank you.
I think Normandy Park might allow them.
They do.
This man probably lists his ours.
Yeah, he's been waiting to.
All right, so I'm hearing some constant themes tonight. One in particular is that enforcement is very difficult in this area. And that sounds particularly because the resources are limited. So I have two questions. One, you mentioned a 2020 plan, and you mentioned it down Spanaway. Can we have the information on how to get involved in that process? Talk to our representatives, ask for more resources.
Yes.
Number two.
What was the second?
So you mentioned the 2020 plan.
The 20-year plan.
The 20-year
comp plan.
Yes. And you mentioned it was down Spanaway, the meetings?
No.
He was talking about because I live in Skyway.
Okay.
He was kind of pushing me.
I see, okay. But
I was.
I don't necessarily respond to
the
that.
point is obviously, how can we be involved? How can we, make sure that our representatives are hearing, we need more resources. Our sheriffs are working incredibly hard, our fire department works incredibly hard, and they're under resourced. And I really hope that's a takeaway tonight. And I mean it to all three of you, and I'm sure it is, but there are resources that are needed. And there are action items that we need to be able to do. And so we need communication as to how we can act. I'm sure the census in 2020 is a big part of that, to get federal dollars, to show that this area has grown drastically. I'm sure that it's contacting all of you, but the reality is we need action items. We need to know who we need to talk to and what we can do to get the resources so we can have the community that we all love and care about.
Look on the back of your agenda. Next Saturday is supporting heroes appreciation dinner. The second item is next Thursday, a week from tonight, at Field Gardens. King County is having a town hall. I believe Councilman McDermott will be there.
I will be there, John Taylor will be there, a number of your friends from King County will all be there, yes.
Will Sheriff Whiskey be there?
I don't know.
I will.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know.
He will definitely have staff. He always has staff.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure people knew.
Regarding the budget and resources, to try to answer your question as directly as I can.
Yes.
King County General Fund, 75% of it goes to public safety. So we're already investing 75% of the county's general fund in public safety, and we're not meeting all the needs. Our resources are limited. The county has had, as part of our legislative agenda, representatives, almost gave you a promotion, representatives Cody and Fitzgibbon have been supportive of the idea of lifting the ban on the amount of property tax the county can collect, the amount of increase year to year. And that is how the county would address revenue and resources to be able to provide more public safety, more sheriff's deputies. It's either to cut other areas, and I just told you 75% of the general fund is already public safety. So the number one item on the county's legislative agenda for years has been to go to Olympia and work with the legislature to lift the 1% limit on property tax increases for the county's overall revenue. Not that 1% doesn't apply to your individual tax bill. Have the assessor in to have the longer conversation about how your individual tax bill is calculated, but the overall revenue King County can collect, and only, I believe, 17 cents of your property tax dollar actually comes to King County. Where the treasurer, you write it to us, and then we send it to school districts, to hospital districts, to cemetery districts, to Sound Transit, and the county keeps 17 cents ourselves.
We got thousands of new houses
And
built
so-
around here, so you're getting more money.
And so, working with our state legislature to be able to increase the, have our revenue growth keep up with the growth in services, and let alone the increased demand, the demand we're not meeting.
Housing around here is, there are more
And-
people living here.
And yes,
But our low income housing is increased too, we don't get any of that property tax.
but we're gonna have low-income housing somewhere in the county, and the property taxes raised in North Highline is not what is spent in North Highline. It goes in the general fund, and then investments are made.
Plus the whole fact that low-cost housing is property tax exempt, so that they're not paying.
That's what I was acknowledging, yes.
Yeah.
But it's not that if more low-income housing comes into North Highline, that decreases the amount of revenue, property tax revenue available in North Highline specifically. It's countywide, yeah. And we're gonna have nonprofit housing somewhere in the county.
Why not everywhere?
Yes.
We really need it everywhere.
We do, you're right, but I'm making the point that whether or not it's in North Highline doesn't affect the amount of revenue available to North Highline.
Here's what does affect the revenue in North Highline though, and that is the county has a fairly intricate system of priorities set for budgeting in strategic plans for departments. But there hasn't been a whole lot of emphasis placed on strategic plans for communities. And in fact, the council has resisted the notion that communities have plans which tie their hands at budget time. That's the words I've heard used by county staff. And
Mark, it's funny you say that, because we're in a planning phase right now for the North Highline sub-area plan. And that will be part of the conversation we have next week at the CSA meeting, the Community Service Area meeting, about how to be involved and make sure that North Highline's voice is heard in that process. So please don't leave here tonight thinking there isn't a plan. In fact, the old one still exists. We are revising, working on it, and wanting to hear from you now about how to do that. I hope to see you next Thursday, Sheila Gardens, 7 p.m.
Be there. The existing roads are
Yes. I'll get Liz a link tomorrow. Yes.
From 1994, so.
It's stated.
Okay, well,
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
The 70% for the, what was it, the?
Public safety,
Public safety,
broadly.
what encompasses public safety? Police, obviously, coverage,
The sheriff's office,
sheriff's office.
the prosecuting attorney, public defender, the jails, and the courts.
Prosecuting attorney.
Is there anything is there any talk of, I know I saw something.
I'm sorry, let's hear her out.
I think I saw something where Seattle was partnering with other districts to deal with this homeless and.
Yeah, that's,
Right, and have they talked about any kind of thing with regard to, instead of putting people into jail, putting them into, drugs, lockdown?
That's our script.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I say that because my brother was a counselor at the King County Courthouse for, people that opted out of jail, went to the daily, whatever, and he said, they need lockdown. I mean, if you commit I guess if you commit a crime, if you're living on the streets and you're not contributing, you're not working, you're not doing anything other than doing drugs and harassing people all over the place, that's never gonna stop, ever, until they lock down and make them comply with it.
And we have to have treatment available when people are ready and receptive to it. You're right. And yes, there are diversion programs there isn't a lockdown program where people who are not willing to seek treatment are locked into treatment.
Well, we're opening one.
Okay.
In South King County, it should be open soon, but they have to go through this, my bill. They have to go, they have to be found a danger to themselves and others. Somebody would have, like a family member, or if they're drug crazed on the street, that they can get someone to evaluate them, but it's again a court process because they have to be committed. It's like being committed, but we can now commit people for drugs if there are beds available, and King County will have, are supposed to, they were supposed to be open already, but they're not. It's Valley Cities is opening it. So it's supposed to be opening soon.
Is there a name of the building?
Oh, God. Well, it was Ricky's, they called it Ricky's Law.
Ricky's Law, that's what,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. That was.
Is that the former Milan or Shadle?
Yes.
Everybody here's asking questions. Now, every one of these meetings is well advertised. If you're really interested, go to the meetings. I've been to 100 of them, and there's probably half as many people in this room as those these meetings. If you're really interested, go to the meetings and find out what's going on and put your feelings into it.
Okay.
Likes to have some time by yourself, or?
Oh, no, we're fine.
Well, so yeah, I mean, it's getting late, and I just first of all want to just thank Deputy Kammerer and Major Anderson and Chief Mars. I mean, they have way tougher jobs than we do, and I just feel really fortunate to have them serve this community. I don't want to take up too much time since it's late and we've gone over a lot of important local issues lately, but I do want to just talk about some of the work that and I also don't ever want to come here to you and tell you that we know the answer for how to fix public safety in White Center. We heard a lot of stuff already tonight that we have to take back to Olympia come January when we go back down and make laws, particularly around fireworks and around the 1-year delay that is in current state law that prevents a fireworks ban from taking effect immediately. I do think there's a couple things that we did this year that I do want to highlight, particularly around gun violence prevention. You know, for a lot of what we've been talking about tonight is property crime, but of course violent crime is still very much present in this community. I live just over Roxbury. As a couple months ago, I live a block north of the city limits, so I feel very much like this is part of my community, even though I don't officially live in the unincorporated area. We passed a law, so it used to be that if you were found guilty of a violent crime, you lose your firearm rights. But if you were found not guilty by reason of insanity, you did not lose your firearm rights, which I mean that's one of those things. And so good news is we passed a law that says if you're found not guilty by reason of insanity for a violent crime and the judge considers your access to a firearm to be a threat, potential threat to yourself or others, then you can also lose your firearm rights. We passed a law to improve and extend our extreme risk protection orders, which is a process by which a police officer or a mental health counselor or a family member can go to a court and say, this person in my life or this person that I've dealt with through the criminal justice system or the mental health system should not have access to a gun for this and this reason. That the voters passed several years ago. We passed laws to clarify that can also be applied towards minors, people under 21 or under 18 who already theoretically shouldn't have access to a gun. They should also be able to extend this order so that the guns can be removed from that house entirely, even if they're not the owner because they're a minor. We also passed a law that says a domestic abuser who the court finds a domestic abuser to have access to a firearm that this is one of the most common times that people experience gun violence or any other kind of violence is in the immediate aftermath of a domestic violence event, gave courts the authority to require that, and police officers the authority to remove firearms from that household, make that a less volatile situation by removing access to the weapons that can make that an even more severe situation. So this was certainly the most productive year we've had as far as gun violence. Oh, we also banned another thing. We banned ghost guns. This is where people can print guns on a 3D printer at home, right? It's not trackable, traceable. It's a real problem, and there's some thought that it might be addressed at the national level, but we don't have a great deal of confidence in them to solve that. So we passed a law that just clearly says you can't print a gun in Washington State. The previous year, we banned bump stocks, which were the tool that was used in Las Vegas on that mass shooting there. We can turn essentially a semi-automatic weapon into an automatic weapon. So I feel positive about the steps that we took forward on gun violence prevention this year. I learned a lot tonight about sort of the specific experiences that you all encounter when you're dealing with property crime, dealing with people who are threats to your property for whatever reason, and and I sort of welcome more suggestions for how we can improve state law to help reduce the incidence of these crimes. Obviously, this is a multifaceted problem. Councilmember McDermott talked about the financial challenges that King County faces. They are severe. We are aware of them. I will say that in the other 38 counties in the state, they're probably more severe everywhere. And so increasingly, legislators across the state are hearing about the challenges that counties face that are really more severe than the challenges that cities face, because cities have a lot more revenue options, have a lot more taxes they can collect. To be candid, cities are able to levy a utility tax. Counties cannot. So when I pay my garbage bill or my city light bill, I'm paying a utility tax of about 10%. In unincorporated King County, that's not something you pay, and that is something that does impact the county's general fund in a pretty severe way, which does make it harder for them to provide the adequate public safety coverage that you need here in unincorporated North Highline. So that is something that I will say the legislature has failed in empowering counties to have the resources or the tax options to ask their voters, do you want to support a higher level of public safety services in your jurisdiction? And we support that. We support fixing that, but we are 2 of 98, and we have more work to do in order to convince 50 of our 98 House colleagues and 25 of the 49 senators that it's a good idea to take a vote to allow more taxes that the state doesn't get any of. That is a tension that we experience when we are talking about taxes for local governments in Olympia. So that's somewhere we have a lot more work to do, but I've heard loud and clear about the 1-year ban, the 1-year delay on a fireworks ban being it's an imminent threat to the safety of this community, and it's something that that I think that we can go back to Olympia equipped with those stories, and hopefully with your participation in talking to our colleagues about why this is a threat to this community. So those are some of my takeaways. I'll turn it over to my
Thank you. I'll comment on, because there was a lot of discussion about homelessness and drug activity and that type of thing, that the legislature, since I'm the healthcare chair, that's what I do focus on. And we did do a lot of big changes in mental health this year, put a lot of money, state money, into mental health, actually housing also, which is another part of the issue, but into housing and mental health and drug treatment. And the thing I'll say that has changed so much in the years I've been down there is that in the past, when we would try and talk about drug treatment, people thought those were just people making bad choices. Because of the opioid crisis and how many people have been involved in, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't know somebody that's been somehow touched by opioids. And so that has changed the whole attitude, I would say, of the legislature about drug treatment, which I think is great, so that we really are trying to move forward and getting much more treatment. And because, the other thing I'll say is because we have better treatment options now because of Suboxone, one of the medications, which is medication-assisted treatment. The evidence shows that if you get people on Suboxone, that you can get them off of, that they don't have to use heroin. They don't have the sick kind that he was talking about. So that's one of the ways that we're really trying to increase that treatment, and that we've got a plan we passed a big opioid bill this year about it, which includes all of the heroin. The one question I actually would have had for you is, meth is we're seeing a big increase in meth, and there isn't good treatment options for meth, and so that's probably, I think, we used to have that was meth, and then it went down, and now we're back to meth again, and it's cheap. So that's the big worry I have about how we're gonna try and deal with that. And you got a question?
I do. You talk about treatment plan, right? How many treatment facilities are reopening up after they all closed down?
After they closed down?
Yeah, a lot of treatment centers closed down in Washington State. My husband is a drug and alcohol counselor that works at Thunderbird. We're talking about treatment. Where are these people gonna go to treatment at? Are there more facilities opening up?
Well,
in the
there, we
state?
are, but is that outpatient treatment?
No, inpatient. The only inpatient treatment center in this whole valley,
Oh, no, there's more treatment centers than that.
not inpatient, no ma'am.
Well, there's, the Chick Shadle has some inpatient.
That's private. I'm talking about state.
Oh.
Your state, right?
Yeah, but no, we pay.
That's what I'm talking about, state.
No, yes, but there's more than that, there's, because we have some that have opened up in, Seattle. And then there's down in, as I was saying, in the Valley cities. So, that, I mean, we have had difficulty. No, they're doing an inpatient. But I will say that there is difficulty in siting places, because Valley Cities, the reason it got so delayed, it was supposed to have been opened a year ago, was because they had difficulty in getting a place sited. And that's one of the other things I will say is everybody, and I'll tell this to all of you, people say they want everybody to get treatment, but they don't want a treatment in their neighborhood. And that doesn't work. So that's one of the things I'll just say is that we all have to share in making sure that people can get treatment and get help. I mean, it's the same for mental health. We have issues getting mental health places cited because people start complaining. And I'll tell you, there's one of the medication assisted treatment plans, this is over in Swim. One of the tribes is actually gonna be opening up, and I talked to the representative from over there. They had 1,200 people come out having a fit about it, yet they were also complaining about no, treatment options. So, that's a catch-22. We cannot have it both ways. So that, I'm just gonna point out to everybody that we have to make sure that we take care of our neighbors too, so.
Well, I work in functional medicine and natural medicine, and I think I met you in Olympia a long time ago. Anyway, but I have actually worked on a protocol for methamphetamine, but I'm not done with it, but I started to make a list of, well, what would that be, And so we'll talk, and I found your bill. It's the House Bill 1713, it's Ricky's Law.
Yeah,
So
that
I was
was
aware of that.
2 years ago, 3 years?
Yeah.
I don't know how many years.
So living on Myers Way, I had to learn to understand what was going on with the problem. So for a while it was heroin, and then we stopped seeing the needles in the woods, and so here we are. And it's like, what meaningful help can we offer? So I'm working on it. I've got a rough start on it. So I'll get you a reference. All right.
So it's your turn.
Okay, well, I want to thank all of you, because you were great.
Can I say one thing before I leave the stage, so to speak, here, Liz? So as I've been talking here, as we've all been talking, we've made another 3 or 4 arrests. This just came out there. So that's probably around 10 arrests. I mean, the sergeant's been sending me texts and stuff, letting me know. Including, like I said, the one gun off the streets. We took robbery suspect from Kent, so obviously crooks don't know boundary lines, right? They're all over the place. And so I want to kind of sum it up with the fact that we talked about what we have for police resources in the community on a day-to-day basis, working shifts, working in community crime prevention efforts and working housing and all that. It actually is pretty good compared to some of the communities that we have in King County. But the biggest point though I wanted to share with you is that when we can, and when budget allows, my budget will allow me to do, we can bring teams of officers in to kind of flood the area and take care of these problems and send a little bit of a shockwave amongst the criminals out there. And so all communities are struggling for police resources everywhere. And some cities staff better. Some of our contract cities definitely staff better, but not ideally. I mean, Burien doesn't have the resources to staff the way they should. So there's certainly, it depends on the city budget, depends on other budgets too, but being that we have a pretty big organization, the King County Sheriff's Office, we can still come in there with a lot of resources from different entities, different specializations to attack some of these problems, when they're coming up. And so just something to keep in mind that, as we're talking about resources here, we do the best we can with what we have, and we move those resources around throughout the county to deal with problems that come up. And more of a kind of a crime stat driven type approach. Kind of we got this thing that we started up called Key Stats, so we're gonna be looking at criminal activity throughout the county, all of us majors will be reporting out on it. And we can hopefully draw from each other's resources when there's certain problems that crop up in different neighborhoods to come in there and, like I said, flood those neighborhoods, so.
See you 4th of July, Boulevard Park.
Thank you very much.
One final thing, I think it's really great that all you guys came and that many people came. I don't come to all these meetings, but I think we all have to, one thing I had a friend who said, I live in the ghetto, which is kind of over by Top Hat and everything, and I said, I don't live in the ghetto, I have great neighbors. And I think it's really important for all of us, and I know it's hard for some of the neighbors that have really poor neighbors that we live next to, but for all of us, we just need to partner with all of our neighbors, get to know them, you know, make cookies, have a barbecue, you know, education on the fireworks issue. I kind of thought, maybe we need to go around our neighborhood and just kind of have a, you know, go around to some of the neighborhoods where they were lighting them all off really big and say, hey, you know, the neighbor's bush down, and maybe next year we could kind of cut down a little bit. I don't know, maybe that's a way to help.
Well, last spring, there was a fist fight over the library, over fireworks.
But I mean, what I'm trying to say is I think there is something we can all do, one small thing, to improve our neighborhood, and I think we all have to be a part of that solution. Thank you.
Okay. Real quickly, folks, next month, Sheriff Mitzi will be here, so she's the top of the major, is a great guy. It's unbeatable, but Major Mitzi will be here, and also we'll be discussing the sub-area plan, which Councilman McDermott referred to. So please come again, and we thank you for being part of this.